All right, hey everybody, welcome to Brian and Ethan's Biathlon podcast. I hope you're doing well. Ethan, Biathlon World Cup has started this weekend. Did you watch the races?
I did, and they're very exciting.
Yeah, I had to wake up at 2 a.m. on Saturday morning to watch them because living in California and the races in Finland, the time adjustment is not favorable for me. But I got up and watched the races like a dedicated biathlon fan.
Yeah, in the East Coast, they're like 5 or 6 in the morning, so it's not that bad, but
Yeah.
still
Yeah, you can have biathlon with breakfast, on the East Coast,
true.
but here it's like I had to make the decision. Do I want to stay up late or do I want to wake up early? And
Exactly.
it's never good.
Which one did you go with?
Oh, I decided to wake up
Okay.
early, but then I went back to bed and woke up again for the women's race.
Good idea. Good idea.
Well, welcome to our biathlon podcast to the listeners out there. Ethan and I are both very passionate fans. Obviously, we're from the U.S. We're very passionate fans about biathlon, and yeah, we wanted to make this podcast about the World Cup biathlon scene and give our thoughts on it, and really just talk about biathlon because we're both, like I said, we're both really big fans. We both watch the races pretty religiously, and yeah, and we're hoping to just kind of start a dialogue about biathlon and get people engaged. And yeah, we'd love to have guests on eventually in the future. And who knows where this podcast can go. This is more of just a way for Ethan and I to keep in touch and yeah, just talk about biathlon. um, cool. So I guess let's start out with our first point. Strula Holm Laegreid
Yeah.
freaking won the first race of the season. I don't know anything about this dude.
Yeah.
This guy, I think that surprised most people too. Is
Mhm.
this was his fifth World Cup biathlon start, and he won the race, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah. All I knew about him that he like did some races last year, and I remember seeing him being like, oh, like that dude like looks pretty good. Like he's having good results, and like obviously he's Norwegian, so like there's got like some draw to him there. Yeah. Pretty crazy to see that.
It looks like his first World Cup race was last season in Nova Mesto, and actually his World Cup races are pretty good. I mean, he's been in the top 20 in every race, like a
Mhm.
13th in the sprint, 15th mass start, 10th in the sprint in Kontiohlati. He hadn't been in the top 10 yet, but
Mhm.
yeah, that's his results are pretty good. And actually, the one thing I really notice from his results, even through the IBU Cup, is that he's a really good shot.
Mhm.
One time at Junior Worlds in the pursuit, he had 5 misses, but other than that, there's a lot of zeros and ones next to his name in his results through the Junior Cups, IBU Cups, and now the World Cup. It's been, obviously it's good for him that they started the season off as an individual and being such a good shooter that
Yeah.
he was able to take advantage of that. But um, yeah, he's a good shooter, and I think we're probably going to be seeing a lot more of him in the individuals this year.
And he skied like reasonably fast too.
Yeah, I think his skiing was probably like the fifth best time or something like that. It wasn't, yeah, it wasn't the fastest because I mean, Johannes looks like uh, he's going to be the one to beat this year in terms of skiing. But no,
Mhm.
I mean, yeah, usually in individuals, you always get this weird like you get this weird thing where someone who's a fast shooter but not necessarily a fast skier can win the race, assuming some of the top names have like at least a penalty or two, because overcoming that 1 minute penalty is always so hard. But um, he's actually holding his own on the trail as well, which is definitely going to
Mhm.
give him an advantage. And I was kind of disappointed to see his sprint result because he didn't really back it up with as good skiing in the sprint. But I mean, he still came in 18th, which like top 20 on the World
Mhm.
Cup. It's not that bad. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. Well, it'll be interesting to see, if we see more of this guy through the season, because obviously it's a name that not many people know, but he's had some pretty good
Mhm.
results. He's in his 6 World Cup races. Like I said, he's yet to finish higher than 20th place. Um, so that's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll see more of him later this season, especially with relays and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's going to be a really good addition to the Norwegian relay because I mean they're already super good as it is. But yeah,
Mhm.
this is going to be another good addition. Um, I was going back through. I was trying to do some research on him to find out a little bit more about him because he is such an unknown. And it looks like he had mono on the 2018-2019 season. And when you look at his results, he didn't have any IBU results that year. So it looks like
Mhm.
he was a junior in the 17-18 year, and then he didn't race 18-19, and then he made it back to the IBU Cup in Martel in 1920, the 1920
Mhm.
season. So yeah, it looks like he lost a year there to mono, but obviously
Yeah.
he didn't give up.
I mean, like he made it on the World Cup at the end of last year, right?
Yeah, yeah, it looks like
Yeah.
yeah, by the end of the season last year, he raced his way up to a podium at European Championships in the sprint at Minsk, and then next week he joined the World Cup team in Novo Mesto. So 1980. Yeah, that's like two seasons ago he had mono, and then he was on the World Cup by the end of the next year. So
Yeah. Yeah. Because didn't like the same thing happen to Christensen where he got sick for a whole year and then came back and like blew it up on the World Cup?
um,
I remember hearing something in one of the races that he like got sick either when he's like a junior or something like that, and then he broke into the World Cup and
Christensen does have results every season, every year. He does have IBU results going back to 2009. Some seasons have more results than others, but I didn't realize this, but it looks like Christensen made the World Cup in the 2012-2013 season, which is crazy. Yeah, I don't know. I just like Norway is such a huge country in terms of like biathlon competition that um, I'm sure there's probably plenty of guys in their system that that you could give them an IBU bib on the World Cup and they would probably take advantage of it with like a nice top 20. But just because they're number like 6 or 7 in Norway, they're stuck at home this year with moving the IBU Cup back. Um,
yeah, a nice luxury to have.
I don't know. Must be nice. All right, should we move on? COVID. Obviously, this year is going to be it's going to be tough. I really hope that we can continue through the season because I think biathlon and I think a lot of sports have shown this, but it's this subtle return to normalcy. When everyone is walking around with masks, staying inside, quarantining, avoiding gatherings. Biathlon is this really cool um, muse for people to get out and kind of
Mhm.
escape the stress from COVID. Um, but it would really suck if if the season had to get canceled because of poor. Um, I don't even want to say poor management. I would just say poor decision making by like an athlete or a coach
Mhm.
or something, and they decide to break the bubble and go out and end up getting
Mhm.
COVID and spreading it through a team or a hotel or something
Mhm.
like that. I feel like there's a lot of pressure right now on the athletes to be smart about things like that.
I mean, like we've seen it, like at least here in America with other sports, like the NBA and the NFL, like players breaking the COVID guidelines and having huge effects on their teams and their seasons. And like it would really suck to see that happen on the World Cup for
Right,
like biathlon, skiing, Nordic fine, any of that.
right. And it's really interesting to see how like different countries are reacting to COVID. Obviously, I think like the U.S. team, I can't say the country of the U.S., but the U.S. team, I think, has been trying to take a really safe approach to it. And they, were requiring athletes to be tested and then go over to Europe for the first training camp, get tested again, obviously try to isolate while you're there. And then I heard rumors that, the Ukrainian team who's staying in the same hotel as the U.S., they're not testing and they just showed up. And then when they got there, they did some tests locally and they turned out that there was like a coach on their staff that had COVID, and it's one of those things where it's like, oh well, if you knew you had COVID, you probably shouldn't have come. So why didn't you test before you came? And you're putting other countries and other athletes at risk, maybe because your country is a little bit more relaxed about it. Yeah, it's going to be tough to see. I mean, we've already seen a few differences, like obviously moving the World Cup opener to Kontiohlati when it's normally in Ostersund. But yeah, I was kind of nervous that they would, just forego the like mass start and the relay kind of stuff because of COVID this year. But it's I'm glad to see that it's still on the schedule and they can still do it.
Yeah, and like everyone loves to see that like head to head competition too right away. In previous years, I know it's a lot easier for teams to like switch out who comes like for this weekend and then the next weekend. Like with COVID now, it's probably gonna be they probably have to choose one and stick with them for a while.
Yeah, and I mean, the IBU has also taken a pretty firm stance on COVID as well. They've released a COVID, a special event and competition rules specifically related to COVID-19. And they even gave, because, they canceled the IBU Cup, or not canceled, but they pushed the IBU Cup back and they canceled the Junior Cup. They've given some countries more start spots so they can try to encourage more participation from, people who would normally be on the IBU Cup. They can give them some experience on the World Cup, and then same thing for the IBU Cup. They've given them more start allocations. So people who are maybe junior cup athletes who are competitive and maybe could be on the IBU Cup, now they can just say, hey, take this last spot on the team and get that experience on the IBU Cup, even though you're a junior. And I know the U.S. is doing that with their spot. So at least, I know the U.S. is taking advantage of it, and I'm sure other countries will too.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next talking point. All right, our guy Sebastian Samuelsson is freaking killing it right now. Seabass, third fastest course time in the individual, fourth fastest ski time in the sprint. Like, the dude is crushing right now. And every time, I mean, Sebastian has been a really fast skier even in his junior years, but every time I see him ski, I'm just like, he's crushing. It just blows my mind. And I mean, he's definitely not, I wouldn't consider him like a youngster anymore. I mean, he definitely has a few years of experience and a silver medal from the Olympics to his name, and another medal from the relay. So it's not like he's just some young guy who's busting in there and trying to shake things up anymore. I would almost consider him more of not a favorite, but more of an experienced athlete these days. But every time I see him race, he always makes me super excited because it's just great to see. Because knowing him as a young junior, for me, it's been great to see his progression, to see where he is now.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah,
Like he came onto the scene with the bang. It's like everyone I feel like has kind of been watching him every single season to see what he does.
mm-hmm,
I think last year he struggled a little bit on the range, but was still
mm-hmm,
skiing pretty dang fast.
mm-hmm,
And it was really exciting to see him kind of put the two and two together. That's right at the start of the season,
mm-hmm.
right off the bat.
Yeah, no, and it's actually interesting that you say that because in the post-race press conference, he actually said that he was very confident with his shooting, but he was interested to see how his skiing was going to hold up this year, which is interesting because I agree with you. In years past, I think he's always been a very strong skier, like not a top 5 skier, but definitely like a top 15 to top 10 skier.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but his shooting has always been what has let him down. And the fact that he came into the season feeling confident about his shooting and he was wondering how his skiing was going to hold up, that is, at least for me, that's really motivating news for him and for Team Sweden, to be at that level of confidence with your shooting, that you're more concerned about your skiing when in the past your skiing has been your strong suit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. And I think, especially in biathlon, like the shooting aspect takes so much mental strength and fortitude to put it together and have it all come
Mhm,
out as you hope and as you practice every single day at training. Like
mhm,
skiing is a little bit of like second nature almost, where you kind of just go out there and push yourself.
mhm,
But him being able to put those two together, and like you said, like be a little concerned about his skiing, like that's an easier fix during the season than the shooting is for sure.
mhm. Yeah, and I don't know if you saw the Swedish national season opener a couple weeks ago, where Stina Nielsen made her biathlon competition debut. But while everyone was focused on Stina on the women's side, Seabass won both races on the men's side in pretty dominating fashion. Like, he's definitely skiing really well, and I mean, who knew? Like nobody knew at the time that Sweden, at least compared to the other teams, is such a force right now.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, he won in pretty dominating fashion and was skiing kind of head and shoulders above the rest and shooting well as well. So
Mhm.
um, yeah, I'm really excited to see how Sebastian does. What's your take? Do you think, if he's consistently skiing top 5 fastest ski times and he's feeling confident with his shooting, do you think he has a chance of making a run at the yellow bib, taking it from Johannes?
Ooh, I don't think he'll have it by the end, but I think he'll be pretty dang close by the end. I think he'll definitely be challenging Johannes throughout the season, just because having that confidence is so big, and to be able to have that with you at the start of the season, I think is going to be a really good thing to have going for him. And like
Mm,
after Fourcade retired last year, like Johannes is kind of up there on this like pedestal by himself almost, and we're just waiting to
mm,
see who's the next challenger for him. And I think
mm.
Sebastian definitely has a really strong chance of being that person.
So in last year's season, Sebastian shot 80% total, hitting 84% prone and hitting 77% standing, where Johannes was actually 89% across the board. So, Johannes he's obviously a really fast skier because his skiing is negative 5% against the field, um, which means he's skiing 5% faster than the field. Um, but his shooting is like 89 or 90%, which means you really, in a 4-stage race, on average he'll be missing 2 shots. A 2-stage race he'll be missing 1 shot. Where Sebastian last year, he was 80%, which means he's missing 4 in a 20-shot race and 2 in a 10-shot race. So, and also Sebastian's skiing was negative 2% last year, which means he's skiing 2% faster than the field, but obviously -5 to compared to -2. When you're talking about percentages, that's a lot of time each K that Johannes has on Sebastian.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just based on pure stats, looks like Johannes is, he's got it on paper. But obviously, we know in biathlon, it's not always about paper. Sometimes it always comes down to when do you have those 2 misses. If you have, if you're down to be missing 2 every race based on the stats, and you have those last 2 misses in the last stage, and you're with someone who had misses early but ends up cleaning those last targets in that last stage, anything's possible in biathlon, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And that's why we love the sport, right? Because if it just came down to stats and percentages and points and stuff like that, it wouldn't be as fun. So
Mhm.
yeah, it'll be interesting to see. But I agree. I don't know if Sebastian can really give Johannes a run for his money this year, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But either way, I think yeah, Johannes is pretty strong.
Do you think, because Sebastian isn't the only Swede that's tearing it up out there, do you think starting the season not at home in Östersund is affecting not only him but the team as well?
That's actually interesting because he mentioned, or maybe Hanna Oberg, someone they asked in one of the post race conferences, they asked one of the Swedish athletes how they feel about not starting at home, and they did say that obviously they love to race at home, they love to race in front of their fans, and I mean Sweden has always had incredible results in Östersund. Um, but I don't know. Maybe it obviously it obviously does not look like it's affecting them because they're having such great results. Just speaking about the men specifically right now, they're having good results. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think it might just be the first. I don't know. It's really hard because the first weekend of the season is always just I don't know, completely up in the air. Like we saw last year, Fialkova from Slovakia, like she had some really good races in Ostersund, and she was in the top 3 for the overall World Cup after the first 2 weekends of the year, and then she kind of rode that momentum out to finish out, pretty well. But
Mhm.
we always see some random craziness in the first couple weekends, and I think it is just because of coming off of training Some people are peaking for the first week. Some people are trying to peak for world championships. Johannes said in a post-race press conference that his goal this year is to win the yellow bib. So, he's looking at a more long-term approach. So I think it's one of those things where it's going to be a little crazy at the beginning of the year. Like, for example, Eric Lesser coming in third in
Mhm.
the first race and then ninth in the sprint. Like last year, he wasn't even the top guy on the German team, and he even said that he almost didn't make the team this year because the team is so strong. But after one good race in their German qualifying race, he qualified for the team, got a start spot, and then ended up coming in third in the individual. So it with biathlon, things like that happen all the time. So we'll see how everything levels out. Probably by the first week in Hochfilzen, December 17th and 13th. Um, but I mean, Sweden is looking
Yeah,
pretty good right now.
I think they'll be able to give Norway a good run for their money in the Nations Cup and on the relays.
Yeah, that's where I think it's going to come down to. I mean, obviously with Laegreid joining the Norwegian team and being another a good uh, a good addition to their relay team, and then with France also losing for a COD this year.
Yeah,
I mean, it's actually funny though. France, I feel like, hasn't been that competitive in the relays in the past couple of years, and I don't know really why. It seems like they always choke on relay day.
yeah,
Considering that, I mean, last year I think they had so many people in the top 10 overall. Like, I mean, Quentin Fillon-Maillet obviously has always been really good. They
Mhm.
had Fourcade, who is a legend. uh, Emilian Jacquelin, he's like the kid. He's coming up. He's obviously a world champion. He was able to outsprint Johannes Tingesbo in the pursuit at world champs. Like, they have so many good names on their squad, but for some reason they just couldn't pull it all together on relay day last year, which doesn't make any sense. But you France loses for COD. Norway gains Laegreid. Sweden is just strong in general. Um, yeah, I think I'm hopeful that the relays will be a little bit more exciting this year because nobody likes to see just one team dominating. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, talk about Sweden, the freaking Swedish women. Like, I know we were just talking specifically about the men, but the Swedish women, that, like, they're on a different planet right now.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know who stood out to you of the Swedish women.
I think both Oiberg sisters like skiing like ridiculously fast. They looked confident and collected on the range, and then the rest of the team was just filling in the remaining like top 10, top 15 spots.
hmm And I mean, right now it's only been two races, but the overall is Hanna Oberg is in first, followed closely by Johanna Skotheim, actually, which is really interesting. Um, she got her first World Cup start last year in Oberhof, and looking at her results, I mean, she had some races where she finished in the 50s and 60s, and then a few races where she's kind of in the teens. And I mean, so far this year, she's third and fourth. She has not missed a shot this season yet, which is that's always good. Coming out of the first weekend, being like, I haven't missed yet, so I guess my shooting's okay. But yeah, she's only had 18 World Cup starts, and um, looks like she's had a pretty lengthy career on the IBU Cup. Um, but yeah, I mean, she's definitely making the most of her World Cup start spots this year.
Yeah, and this is the Swedish team without Stina Nielsen. Like we'll have to see how she is able to fit into everything.
Right, and that too, and actually, I think Skotime actually trained with Nielsen a lot this summer. I think they come from the same team back in Sweden, so I wonder if Skotime training with Nielsen gave her any advantages, in her own personal career, and also I wonder if obviously Nielsen being able to train with Skoheim, that's probably a great, probably a great training partner considering Skoheim's ranked second right now in the overall. Um, yeah, it'd be interesting to see the long term, if Scott Time can keep it up because obviously it's not a name that we really know. from the Swedish team. Like when I think of Team Sweden, obviously Hanna Oberg, and Lynn Pearson, and Mona Brorson, all these names, really strong athletes. But then out of nowhere, you get Skotheim coming in, and now she's ahead of everyone. And the only person who's been able to beat her from Team Sweden so far has been Hanna Oberg, but she won the race. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's going to be tough for Team Sweden because I think they have a lot of women, and like you said, they have Stina Nielsen, who wasn't that impressive in her first couple races. I made a YouTube video about this, but I don't know if Stina Nielsen is even going to make it to the IBU Cup this year, just because you can tell that there's a little rockiness with her biathlon procedure. But I mean, Ingela Anderson, she's another one from Sweden who she has done extremely well on the IBU Cup in the last couple of years. She's not on the team. She didn't get the nod. There's a lot of girls on the Swedish team right now that are really strong that aren't even here right now. So I don't know. my money's on Team Sweden to take the overall this year. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's a safe bet. I mean, look how it's going so far.
in my opinion, the most impressive thing I saw this weekend was Elvira Oberg, who is Hanna Oberg's younger sister. Elvira was coming out of the penalty loop, and Hanna had about a, oh, I'd say probably a 10 to 15 second head start on Elvira as Elvira was leaving the penalty loop. And then when they fast forwarded to another checkpoint on the course, Elvira caught Hanna on the trail and actually ended up finishing right in front of her as they crossed the finish line together. And I mean, right off the bat, like, that's not just impressive that she was able to make up that ground. The, the most incredible thing about this is that Hanna not only won the race. Now, Hanna not only won the race, Hanna had the second fastest ski time on that lap. The only person who skied faster than her on that lap was her little sister, Elvira, who caught her on that lap. And so for me, I'm like, holy crap. Like, we already know about Hanna, Olympic medalist, world champion. Elvira, she's going to be the one to look out for.
Yeah, that'd be really exciting because I know Hana's like been there, but she hasn't quite been like consistently up there for previous seasons, like in terms of like winning multiple races in a row and like taking away multiple medals at world champs and that stuff. Like she's always had like one really great race, then a few that are kind of like top 10s, top 15s, top 20s, like still great races, don't get me wrong, but she hasn't been consistently up there. And I think if her sister Elvira is able to put the skiing and the shooting together, she could really be that person to like be that dominant force in the women's field.
Yeah. I mean, I think the place where Elvira had issues last year was in the prone. She was shooting 73%. Standing was 82%. They were both pretty good, but yeah, if you want to be competitively or consistently at the top of the field, you definitely need to get that up to like 85% at a minimum, and then ideally closer to like 90%. All right, last shot. Team USA. What would you give their rating this year or after the first weekend?
I think out of 10, I'd give them a solid 7.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah. I think it wasn't like spectacular, but I think they definitely started the season out stronger than they have before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think this has been pretty traditional with the U.S. team. I feel like they don't come out swinging, from the gate. I feel like they're more of a like build into it type of team where you hope for some good results in the first couple stages of the season, but yeah, as the season goes on, they'll improve, and yeah, we'll see some better results from them.
Yeah, and it wasn't like one person like was destroying it out there. Like it was a really good like team effort. Like Jake and Claire both got in the top 30, and Leaf also got in the top 30.
Yeah, and I mean, Leafs shooting last year he was the only one clean at the individual at World Champs, and this weekend he was 95%. Skiing, little behind, but I'm sure that'll come.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think Jake Brown's 30th. That was a great result. Shooting 90%, coming in 30th place, like that. I think that's where USBA wants to see guys like Jake and Paul and Max. They're relatively new to the sport of biathlon, but they have some good talent. They're really fit. They're really good skiers. Obviously, the shooting is coming along, but I think that's really where you want to see someone like them in the 30 to 40 range.
Mhm.
It's when they start, popping over 60 and they're missing the pursuit. That's when it starts getting, I don't know, maybe not frustrating, but it starts getting a little like, oh, come on, like
Yeah.
we got to see some results for the effort that's been putting out.
Mhm.
But um, no, I'm really pleased with Jake's 30th place in the sprint, and I think even if that was Sean, like if that was Sean in 30th place, I would be happy with that as well. So now that we have someone like Sean who we know can do well
Mhm.
from the 20s to the 30s, and now Jake has proven that he can be in the 30s. And I know that Paul and Max, they can be with Jake because they train together very
Mhm.
frequently. They're really consistent in time trials and stuff like that. Um, yeah, I feel like the team as a whole, at least the men's team as a whole, it's looking like they're going to be um, taking a step forward
Mhm.
compared to last year.
Yeah, and I think it'll be really interesting to see them in the relays too.
Yeah, because the relays. I mean, it would be nice to have that one guy like a Bo or like a Samuelsson who can, you'd be like, oh, like he's our
Yeah,
anchor leg.
yeah.
He can win the race for us. But I think you're right in terms
Mhm.
of overall, they're pretty consistent, and I think that's what's more important to a relay. Like if you have, we've seen in the past from other teams, they'll have one really weak leg and the team falls apart. But if you can have
Mhm.
four really consistent people, then that is how you win the relay, or that's how you are, you place well in the relay. So yeah, actually I haven't thought about that yet this year. I've only been thinking about individual results so far, but yeah, I'm actually really excited for the relays this weekend then. um,
Yeah.
yeah, then on the women's side, I mean Claire crushed it this year. She did really very well in that roller ski festival in France. um, and yeah, I was kind of hoping for a little bit better result with her clean shooting, but again, it's early in the season. It's so hard to tell. Team is
Yeah,
coming from North
yeah.
America, so they probably had some sort of travel restrictions, getting to Finland, that have been stressing them. But
Mhm.
um, no, I think in general, this is actually a pretty good start compared to seasons past for the U.S. And I'm really excited to see, as the season goes on and they start ramping things up as they do traditionally, where they end up by the time we do get to like Oberhof or even the second week in Hochfilzen, and then full on by world champs in Slovakia or Slovenia.
Yeah, and a lot of the U.S. women like Maddie and Chloe like haven't had a whole lot of World Cup experience, and I think them getting that chance to do that early in the season will pay off big time come the end of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of goes back to like what we were saying earlier is like, you give people the experience early, and hopefully they can take that as motivation to really excel moving forward. All right, spare round, last question. Coolest new rifle design this year?
I I think Johannes always comes in with something that's pretty strong, but I actually liked Laegreid's a lot. The green and the yellow stripes.
Yeah, it kind of had like a dragony pattern on it.
Yeah, it was different, and it was definitely like vibrant and out there, but I feel like it wasn't too vibrant and out there that it was weird.
Yeah, something like an Anton Shipulin dragon.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, I like that one too. I know that one's probably going to be getting a lot of attention. So I actually am going to go with Doro's silvery chrome rifle, because I feel like a
Mhm.
lot of times we see cool colors, but
Yeah.
Doro's chrome rifle to me looks pretty sweet, especially with the glare from the stadium lights under the lights in Finland.
Yeah.
So, yeah, hopefully we'll see some other cool rifles as more people start making it on TV, and we can critique some other designs.
Mhm.
All right, well that's all for us this week on Brian and Ethan's Biathlon podcast. Be sure to tune in next week to hear our thoughts on next week races, and be sure to subscribe, and you will be notified every time we come out with a new episode. Thanks.
Thank you.